Welcome to this edition of Small Town Developers, and I would say small town developers with big time dreams. I'm talking about John Inch Jr. this morning. I'm Gary Sutton, and welcome to our podcast here today with John. And John, a lot of people don't remember when they first saw the Inch & Co. signs, but all of a sudden they saw a whole bunch of them around this area here, and a small town, small area, York, PA. But people started saying, who's Inch & Co.? What are they doing? 2004, it all started. Maybe some big-time dreams started back then, too. Good morning, John. Great to have you on the show. And where did this whole dream start of Inch & Co.?
Well, I think it really started with my dad. And he was really kind of the patriarch, and before that, my grandpa. But both of them really just had a work ethic that I think relayed to us. But it really didn't translate into a whole lot of money. So I always joke around with everyone, we're third generation builders, but we're first generation funds.
There you go.
So, we've worked a lot, put a lot of time in, and over time we've evolved into where we're at today. And I think most of the time when I look back over the last 20 years, what really differentiated us and where people really started seeing us when we got into real estate. And real estate was the main driver, and where people actually started noticing us, seeing our signs, seeing our trucks and trailers. Our landscape division has really taken off in Inch & Co. Outdoors now, and seeing the trucks and trailers and all of the signage and all of the properties and the real estate brokerage. Everybody kind of thinks that we own, half the houses in York. We really don't. It's really part of our brokerage, and all of our realtors and our brokerages do a phenomenal job in getting us out there and getting our signs out there. But in a small town, it comes with a bad price, because then everybody also assumes, that you own everything, and we don't.
It's interesting that, you saw these Inch & Co. signs popping up all over the place. And a lot of people said, who are these guys? We've seen the Kinsley signs, we've seen the Stuart Mart signs, we've seen all those kind of signs around. All of a sudden, there's this Inch sign on the streets. Is it fair to say, and I'm sure you probably heard this before, there's like kind of a mystery about you guys a little bit. People know you in the community. You've been around here. You were Northeastern grads, the whole thing. You played basketball. People have known you that way. They know your son Dallas, who's a heck of a golfer. They know your family. And yet there's a sense that people in the community don't really know you, that there's a certain mystery around, well, how did they come in so fast? How did they get so successful so quickly? What do they need to know about you to know about how you started to get successful so quickly from 2004 to the present?
Well, I think Jeff and I, when we started, back when we left my dad's company, and then we merged back again 2 years later, I walked into Jeff's office one day and I said, why can't it be us? And coming from a small town in this little area, Manchester, we grew up in the trailer park there, right off Westwood Drive, which we loved. And I told Jeff one day, I said, with all the success we've seen, the names you just talked about there, signs everywhere, trucks everywhere. I told Jeff, I said, why can't it be us? Why can't we grow something into something that would be like everybody else has grown? Business is pastime. But what I didn't realize was kind of the effort and the stigma that you get in a fast growing company. And even though we've had some highs and lows, growing up in a small town and then growing in a small town has been super, super tough, because as soon as somebody is doing better than you, right away there seems to be some greed or jealousy. And that's driven a lot of Jeff and I's kind of problems over the last couple of years. Is everybody roots for you when you're small. Everybody roots for you when you're just getting started. And then it's very cliche, but as you grow, the haters come out more and more.
As you think about what started your company in terms of your values, your philosophy, I remember an old coaching phrase, people form habits and habits form futures. What are the habits of Inch & Co., and what's the future you're looking to try to forge with those habits down the way?
Well, we're very fortunate, Jeff and I, that we were raised by good Christian parents. And we had a good Christian heritage. And my grandpa, Shockley, actually started Bible Baptist Church, which is on the Susquehanna Trail. It was actually where the baseball stadium was on Arch Street.
Okay.
They demolished that there, and then built a new church, which is right out off 11th Avenue. You can see it off Route 83. They moved from there up Susquehanna Trail. So we were really rooted in Christianity and just our belief in God and our faith in God. And that really keeps us grounded. If not, we've seen a lot of bad cases where that wasn't the fact. They weren't raised like we were raised, and your morals can catch up with you, your character can catch up with you real quick, especially when you get a little bit of success and you have a little bit of money to play with.
You talk about working with your brother. You talk about working with your family. That is not always a great combination, as you well know over history, watching people around the country, but you guys have made it work. So if you sit back and you say, here's my role, here's Jeff's role, what's that look like?
Well, ooh.
Remember, Jeff's going to watch this somewhere
Yeah,
along the line.
yes. He's so it's not easy. We've known tons of family offices. We know tons of family companies right now
Right.
that have struggled very, very much. We were just actually with one yesterday in Lancaster that had a lot of hurdles. And to go back to give you like a quick story, which is I'm not crazy proud of. Even back when we first started, at one point my mom had to call the pastor to the house and sit down with Jeff and I and Justin and my dad and try to play mediator because of just the fighting that was going on between us.
Wow.
And the pastor came in there and ended up, my dad kind of kicked him out of the house because he was a very aggressive personality. And we continued with that. And I think looking back now, as you get older, you reflect and you get a little smarter, at least a little bit smarter. And I think it's because we wanted so bad to be successful, every one of us. We just had different understandings of what it took to get there.
Right.
And we were arguing over the same things. We just wanted to be profitable. We wanted to pay our bills. We just wanted to get a couple more trucks so we could start another crew, so we can grow another landscape crew. We wanted to build another house. But all of those things took so much out of each one of us that it just turned into like hostility. And until we started growing a little bit more and we started figuring out like, okay, here's a couple roads we can take. Let's all agree there could be 3 or 4, but there's not 15. And once we honed in on that and we could see, okay, here's how we get financing and here's how we get equity, and here's how we grow. And still we got that formulated and everybody kind of agreed. Even as of 5 or 8 years ago, Jeff and I would be, in the office here screaming back and forth.
Was there a moment you remember where it came together, where you said, okay, we're going to go from many voices to the one voice of Inch & Co., even though there's a lot of different opinions on how to get there? Was there a moment where you remember that kind of coming together?
Yeah, I think it was really one of our first big projects. And Jeff kept telling me, I'm going to tank the company. I'm going to tank the company because I wanted to take a lot of risk on this big development deal.
Right.
And the deal ended up being, gigantically successful. Once we finished that deal, Jeff and I, and that was about 5 years ago, Jeff and I saw things a lot different. Okay. And he understood kind of the path that we took because we were originally just doing, small single family home builds, townhome, little 4-6 unit builds. And then when we did that first large community, and I looked at Jeff when we got done with that, it's really hard. I drove a $9 million check to the bank. And if nobody's ever done that before, and I deposited in the bank.
Knees get weak?
Yeah. Well, you're driving to the bank, I just stared at it the whole way,
Right.
the whole car ride over, and I'm watching this. And it didn't make us feel any different.
Yeah.
And I really take that back to my mom and my dad and how we were raised. And money really wasn't the driver. It was just trying to be successful, and that's really all we focused on.
You guys are really aggressive. I mean, and I think that a lot of that comes from being competitive. You've grown up being competitive. You've played a lot of sports. You once told me that if I wasn't doing business, I'd be playing sports all the time. You still do an awful lot of that, a lot of working out and so forth. But, sometimes that can turn people off. And you said a little bit ago, sometimes there's jealousy, other companies looking at you and so forth. And yet that seems to be part of the bedrock of what you're doing. You said having good Christian parents, having good values, but being competitive as well, but also wanting to see a job through and see it get done. Talk about that as part of your philosophy here with Inch & Co.
Yeah, we, growing up without any resources, the only path to get successful was to find resources.
Right.
It's to be resourceful. And that's what we learned very quickly. And we learned it even when we were at a young age because we didn't have much. So we'd go out to our first landscape job or our first, construction job. And, we'd run 3 crews with 1 truck. We drop off materials at this time. The guys would get started. We drop materials at this job. And we learned how to be resourceful with very limited resources. And you can go a bunch of different ways. And one of the stories that I always tell, there was a doctor in York, and he retired. And Jeff and I wanted to start another crew, and we just didn't have the money. We didn't have the budget.
All right.
And I went to him. He had trucks on Craigslist for sale. And he did a handshake deal with me. He sold me 2 trucks, and I put $500 down, on a $30,000 truck each of them. And he believed in us at that age. And he actually brought in about 2 months ago, right before he passed away, a whole collage of pictures that he had from when we were younger and he started letting us invest with him till now. So it was pretty special.
You talked about some of the controversies that come up when you're in business, and that's going to happen anywhere. If you're the best baseball team or the best basketball team around, people are going to start looking at you and saying, the biggest dog in town. How do you react to that? When you hear people in the community, because you've got a love for community that I've rarely seen. You love York. You've grown up around here. You've started your businesses here. Obviously, you're going to other places too, but York's still the crux of where you're at. How do you feel when you hear the controversy or you hear people write things or put things in social media about you?
Well, in our business, being a developer, you're going to constantly get the backlash from the community because things change. And our competitive nature doesn't allow us to back down or to, backstep. What we like to do is, do our research ahead of time. And if our conscience says this is good for the community, then we want to put it out there. We want to go forward with it. And the things that we're proposing to do are not killing people. We're not, we're not trying to put strip clubs in the middle of developments.
Right.
We're not trying to do anything that would affect anybody negatively. We're trying to bring business to the area of York. We're trying to build homes. We're trying to, provide housing options for York County. And it seems like the more that we go, that jealousy, and it's really isolated to one small community. And, I hope these listeners hear that because they will kind of know who they are. That one small community that it came out of is really just one project. But when we go around Harrisburg, Lancaster, down into Maryland, or we go out to different parts of the United States, it's not that way. They're pro-business. So that's part of the intricacy of dealing with a small town in development is that they know us. The people that are against us, I see them at the grocery store and they come up to us and they talk to us with no problem. I see the news reporters and they have no problem talking to me. So I think that feeling that they know us also gives them the empowerment to feel like they can talk about us.
It started with land development. It's obviously done very well, land development. But in that time, there's been a bigger umbrella and a lot more divisions added to that land development. Talk a little bit about how Inch & Co. has gone, because you're inquisitive guys. You guys get into a lot of areas. But you've managed to now put a big umbrella over the top of land development, and then there's a whole lot of other little parts to this. Tell people about those parts, and they're not necessarily little.
So what builds our mindset into growth and how we do is issues that have happened and things we can learn from the past.
Right.
And we knew multiple construction companies, multiple manufacturing companies that went out of business that didn't make it over the 5-year hurdle. And we were just researching why. And Jeff and I are very, very curious when it comes to business and finance, and we'll ask anybody anything.
Right.
So going through that process and when we were building, we realized that, if we just are a construction company, if we were just a land company, if we were just a landscape company, if we were just a residential brokerage, if we were just a property management company, that there's risk, there's a high risk. And one thing that one of our mentors was high about, and he said one of his only regrets in his life was that he didn't go into real estate earlier. And the reason being is that Jeff and I have built such a big portfolio of real estate, along with our companies growing just as fast, that we always have assets to back us. And what's worrisome in going into any of these other companies, and you're just building and building, and you're reinvesting into your company, but you're really not getting a full reinvestment. Every dollar that you put into labor, if you put into buying new computers, they're gone. It's gone forever. You're not reselling them. You're not making any money off of them. So one thing that you can do when you're diversifying is to get into real estate. And we got into real estate really heavy, along with growing all the other companies. That gives us the structure that our holding company at the top can be so strong that even if a couple of our companies aren't performing like they should, we can always kind of give them an escape net to get out. And if we didn't have that, it'd be very vicarious, like growing as fast as we did.
Every company has a wonderful winning streak. You've had a bunch of winning streaks with your company, but I suspect there have been moments where you've had one where you said, "Ooh, that was a loser," or maybe we're going in the right direction here, or maybe we're going in the wrong direction at this particular moment. Talk about your biggest victory. Talk about maybe some of the worst moments where you've had to look at it and say, "Okay, time to readjust."
So it's a good question. So we have a couple big stories in development where we've made tens of millions of dollars on each project that we've done very, very well. We also have a couple, stories that everybody has that we didn't do very well. And it wasn't really as much on our side. It was just more of understanding how the process works. And when you grow real fast, you do a lot of things that you've never done before. So we had one project that we had done a lot of work in the forefront, make sure that the project was going to go very, very smoothly. On the back end, we didn't realize that the engineer never set the updated plans to the township. And that ended up costing us about $3.5 million more than we originally thought. Luckily, fortunately, on our side, rents grew at that time, the market changed at that time, and the values increased. So, for 6 to 8 months, it was very, very strenuous, and we got through it. But now going back, the next time we go into that project, we won't have that. Our diligence is a lot more sophisticated, and we will not let that happen again. But everything that we do is a elevated risk and it's evaluated risk. And as you get smarter, as you get older, you learn that those risks, some of them are worth taking and some of them are not worth taking. And 10 years ago, Jeff and I took every opportunity as it was the best opportunity.
You guys are the coaches of a team here at Inch & Co. And having been a coach myself for a few years, I know what it's like to put a team together. So when you put a team together, as you have right here at Inch & Co., what are some of the components of being the head coach there? And what do you want to see on that team when they come to join you and play the game called business?
That would actually tie into one of our other success or not success stories. So let me tell you what not to do when you're trying to build a team. Let me tell you what not to do. So, we got the understanding, Jeff and I, of going through land development in this, that we were going to build our own site division and our own site team. And going into that team was made up of people from different companies, a lot of different companies. When you want to grow a site team, you get to 30 guys. You're not pulling them for one company. There's not guys sitting around.
Right.
Just the economy and the labor market, nobody's out there looking for hard work. So you end up having a blended group of people that are coming from different companies, and they have different cultures in those companies. And what we underestimated was the difficult pulling together of people that have never been on the Inch team. And the Inch way is kind of, different and unique. We're pioneers. We want to push hard and we go fast.
Right.
And in doing that, that's not the way the other companies operate. So we put together a team on that specific company that didn't end up turning out well, ended up having a lot of turmoil because we had so many blended cultures together. And one thing we learned going through that is that going forward, the people that we bring on will be people that are inundated and understand the Inch way of business before they even come on board. And the way we hire today compared to the way we hired 4 or 5 years ago is wildly different. And we want to make sure that people on our team know our team, understand how we do business. That's different than other people do business. And that are they ready to take the roller coaster ride? Because, a lot of the people, which I love, there's a lot of success stories on our team. And what I like about a team is, on the team that I played on, just because you start off on the bench doesn't mean you're always going to be on the bench.
Right.
And what we've been able to do at Inch & Co., and it's a story to us and a testament to our founding and where we came from, we sat on the bench. 15 years ago, we were on the bench. And in order to get off the bench, you got to learn, you got to grow, you got to take risk, you got to be open-minded and able to do something different than you didn't do yesterday. I can give you 15, 20, 30 stories of people in our company, on our team, that started out in a position that you would call on the bench and are now at really high-level roles, making over $100,000 a year, that are actually fully fulfilling our mission and what we're trying to get to, but they were on the bench 5 years ago.
You've got a pretty loyal group of people here that work with you. What's the key to keeping them loyal? What's the key to making sure that people believe in that mission, stay on your team, and continue to kind of blossom and move forward and get off the bench, maybe become starters later on?
Well, I think one thing Jeff and I are big and adamant about is culture. And culture is not something you teach. Culture is not something that you tell people how to act. You tell people, here's how we operate as a culture. All of that genre that we don't agree to is kind of out the window. With Jeff and I, it starts off with us. Like, we're going to put the work in before everybody else gets to put the work in. Everyone knows in this office and all the offices, they see me out in every job site. They see me out in every community. They see me everywhere we go. Everywhere they go, I am. And one thing that I want to make sure that we do until I die is that we will be the first one to be up, the first one to close the doors, and we want to be the last one to be able to leave the office every single day. And want to make sure that we set that precedent for everybody that comes behind us, with us, beside us. And when people gravitate and see that, and they see the heart we have for the community, the heart we have for each employee, the heart we have for the business, they want to be part of it and they want to align. And our turnover in our company is very, very low, to a national average, wildly low. And we say that just because of the culture that we've created. And it's really a hard work culture. I mean, it's just, if you don't want to work and you don't want to hustle and you don't want to be aggressive and you don't want to grow, then we're probably not the place to be.
Sounds like Michael Jordan used to say, hey, if you don't want to win championships, you don't want to be on my team, you don't want to be on the court with me. Well, that kind of sounds like the same thing that, if that's part of the culture, that's part of the attitude of getting out there and wanting to win. Do you remember the first structure you ever built?
Yes.
Tell me.
So we, years and years and years ago, we built a pool house. And it was a learning experience, a large pool house.
Right.
but it was sophisticated. It was down over a hillside. We had to get materials down. We had to truck the materials down over there with little buggies. And it was a whole learning experience. At the end of it, Jeff and I were both, doing the work ourselves, throwing shingles, framing walls, throwing in windows. And it really helped us, Jeff and I, realize even on a $100,000 project, the small details matter.
Right.
And they don't flesh out always until you're on site, until you're building it. So the pretty pictures that we had in advance to sell the project was not what it was when we got on site.
When you look at the things that are most important to you, what is the most, if I said, of all the qualities that are most important to you, what would be number one on John Inch's list?
Family.
Family.
I mean, family and God
Yeah.
are the two persons. Family is the most. I mean, the God, of course, is number one. I mean, I consider that a given, how we were raised, but family. Like all I care about, is leaving our family in a better position than when we started.
A lot of people look at your family and they'll say, Inch & Co. I see those signs everywhere. I hear about all the deals. I hear about all this kind of stuff. They must be sitting up somewhere in a big house up there on the hill in the manor. And it's nothing to see you out riding the tractor, running the truck, doing a chore, doing all that kind of stuff. That's kind of what you're all about. You've never really lost that, have you?
No, not at all. And it's therapy for me to get back out on the job sites and work. But I get emotional when I start talking about family,
Right.
and where we're at and where we're going. And this was probably about 11 years ago. My parents and I, we were in a big battle and we were arguing and we didn't talk for almost 2 years.
Wow.
And dealing with a family business, as we discussed, it's tough. It's just not, it's very, very hard to make it in a family business. But I sat down one night and I was just so frustrated because I just thought it could work. And I cared about our family so much. So I sat down and I wrote a letter to my mom and dad. And at that point, we weren't together as companies. And I said, if you just entrust us, entrust me to be able to take over the company that you have, bring it into our company. And I said, you will retire in 5 years. I'll give you, pay for your housing, pay for your vehicles, whatever we have to do. I will make sure that you're taken care of for the rest of your life. And I was very emotional when I wrote it. I actually, cried the whole way home while I was writing it in my mind. I sat down, I wrote it that night, and I gave it to mom and dad. And I still actually have it that I refer back to. But in that moment, all I can think about, and it's still to today, is taking care of our family. And that's extended now to our work family and our Inch & Co. family. There's not anything that I wouldn't do to take care of our family.
Family, trust, faith, religion, aggressiveness, competitiveness. That kind of sounds like how you describe Inch & Co. right now. We're going to have some future conversations about small-town developers, but with some big-time dreams still. And we'll talk about some of those big-time dreams as we go forward, John. But thanks for sharing with us this morning where you are right now. I think you've given us a great insight into where Inch & Co. is today.
Yep. Thank you so much, Gary.
John Inch Jr. right here on Small Town Developers.